A single father with only $16 left in his pocket. A bleeding billionaire running for her life in the rain. One impossible choice at a Seattle bus stop that dragged an unemployed construction worker into corporate assassination plots, kidnapping, and a conspiracy worth billions. This is the story of how helping a stranger cost Grayson Cole everything he had left and gave him everything he never knew he needed. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hammered Seattle like it had a personal grudge. Grayson Cole sat alone at the bus stop on Pike Street, hunched inside a jacket that stopped keeping him warm 2 winters ago. His phone battery sat at 4%. His wallet held $16 in crumpled bills and a credit card he was too afraid to swipe because he already knew what the screen would say. Declined again. He'd been fired 6 days ago. Not laid off, not downsized. Fired. Publicly humiliated in front of the entire construction site by a man in an expensive suit who accused him of stealing company funds he'd never even touched. The words theft, investigation, and legal action had been thrown around like grenades. And by the time Grayson understood what was happening, security was walking him off the property. Nobody believed him. Nobody cared. And now he sat at a bus stop at 11:30 at night because he couldn't afford the train fare home, and the next bus wasn't coming for another 40 minutes. His daughter was at home. Mia, 8 years old, bright as hell and stubborn as her mother had been. She thought her dad was invincible, thought he could fix anything. She had no idea that the electricity bill was overdue, that the fridge was nearly empty, or that Grayson had spent the last 3 hours walking through downtown Seattle, applying to jobs he was overqualified for and getting turned away anyway. Because once you're accused of theft in the construction world, the stain doesn't wash off. He pulled out his phone and stared at the lock screen. A photo of Mia grinning at the camera with a gap-toothed smile, holding up a drawing she'd made of the two of them. The picture had been taken 4 months ago, back when things were still okay, back when he still believed the world made sense. Now he wasn't sure what he believed. The rain pounded harder. Grayson leaned back against the graffiti-covered shelter and closed his eyes. He tried to think, tried to plan, tried to figure out how the hell he was going to survive the next 72 hours, let alone the next month. Then he heard the screech, tires, rubber-burning pavement. His eyes snapped open just in time to see a black luxury sedan whip around the corner, fishtailing slightly before straightening out and speeding past the bus stop. The windows were tinted so dark he couldn't see inside, but something about the way it moved felt wrong. Too fast. Too aggressive. And then he saw her. A woman stumbled into the street from between 2 parked cars, her white coat torn and streaked with dirt. She was barefoot. Her hair was soaked and tangled. Blood ran down the side of her face from a cut above her eyebrow. She looked like she'd been running for her life. Grayson stood up without thinking. The woman's eyes darted around wildly, scanning the street, the buildings, the shadows. Then she saw him. For a split second, their eyes met, and Grayson saw something in her face that he recognized. Terror. She ran toward him. "Please," she gasped, her voice hoarse. "I need help." Before Grayson could respond, he heard voices, male voices, shouting. 3 men appeared from the same direction the woman had come from, moving fast. They wore dark clothes and moved with the kind of coordination that made Grayson's stomach drop. These weren't random street thugs. These were professionals. The woman grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into his jacket. "Please," she said again, quieter this time, desperate. "I just need to disappear for one night." Hey. Grayson's brain screamed at him to stay out of it, to walk away, to let whatever this was play out without him. Because he already had enough problems, and getting involved in someone else's nightmare was the last thing he needed right now. But he looked at her face, and he couldn't do it. "Here," he said quickly, pulling the $16 out of his pocket and shoving it into her hand. "There's a motel 2 blocks south. Tell them you're paying cash and don't give them your real name." Her eyes widened. "I can't." "Go," Grayson said firmly. "Now." She hesitated for half a second, then turned and ran. The men were closer now, close enough that Grayson could see their faces. One of them locked eyes with him and started jogging over. "Hey!" the man barked. "You see a woman come through here?" Grayson crossed his arms and kept his expression neutral. "Yeah, she went that way." He pointed east, the opposite direction from where the woman had actually gone. The man stared at him for a long moment, sizing him up. Grayson forced himself to hold the eye contact, forced himself not to look away. Finally, the man nodded and jogged back to his group. They turned east and disappeared into the rain. Grayson stood there for another 30 seconds, his heart hammering in his chest, waiting to see if they'd come back. They didn't. He sat back down on the bench, adrenaline still flooding his system. His hands were shaking. He stuffed them into his pockets and tried to slow his breathing. What the hell did I just do? He had no idea who that woman was. No idea what she'd done or why those men were chasing her. And he'd just given her the last money he had in the world. Grayson closed his eyes and laughed. It was a bitter, exhausted sound. Of course he did. Because apparently his life wasn't already complicated enough. The bus finally arrived 40 minutes later. Grayson rode it north toward Greenwood, staring out the rain-streaked window and trying not to think about the $16 he'd just handed to a stranger. By the time he climbed the stairs to his apartment, it was past 1 in the morning. The building smelled like mildew and somebody's burnt dinner. The lights in the hallway flickered. One of them had been out for weeks, and management didn't care enough to fix it. Grayson unlocked the door as quietly as he could and stepped inside. Mia was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket with her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. The TV was still on, playing some animated movie she'd probably fallen asleep watching. Grayson knelt down beside her and gently brushed the hair out of her face. She stirred slightly but didn't wake up. "I'm sorry, kiddo," he whispered. "I'm trying." He picked her up carefully and carried her to her bedroom, tucking her into bed and pulling the blankets up around her shoulders. She mumbled something in her sleep and rolled over, clutching the rabbit tighter. Grayson stood there for a moment, watching her breathe. She deserved better than this. Better than an apartment with peeling paint and a dad who couldn't even afford to keep the lights on. Better than a father who gave away his last $16 to a stranger in the rain. But she was stuck with him, and he was going to figure this out somehow. Mots. Grayson woke up to the sound of engines. Loud engines. He sat up in bed, disoriented, his brain still foggy with sleep. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains. He grabbed his phone off the nightstand and checked the time. 7:43 a.m. What the hell? The engine noise grew louder. Multiple vehicles, right outside the building. Grayson threw off the blankets and crossed to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to look down at the street below. His stomach dropped. 5 black SUVs were parked in a line along the curb, blocking the entire street. They weren't police vehicles. They were too sleek, too expensive, armored from the look of them. Men in dark suits climbed out of the vehicles, moving with the same coordinated precision he'd seen from the men chasing the woman last night. "Dad?" Grayson turned. Mia stood in the doorway of her bedroom, rubbing her eyes, still wearing her pajamas. "Hey, sweetheart," Grayson said quickly, forcing his voice to stay calm. "Go back to your room for a second, okay?" "Why are there so many cars outside?" "I don't know yet. Just stay in your room." Mia frowned but nodded and disappeared back into her bedroom. Grayson turned back to the window just in time to see the men enter the building. His heart started racing. This was about last night. It had to be. He'd helped that woman, and now whoever was chasing her had tracked him down. He moved quickly, grabbing his phone and stuffing it into his pocket. He didn't have a plan, didn't have a weapon, didn't have anything except the stupid hope that maybe, somehow, this was all a misunderstanding. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside his apartment. Then someone knocked. 3 sharp, authoritative raps. Grayson crossed to the door and looked through the peephole. A man in a black suit stood directly in front of the door. Behind him, Grayson could see at least 4 more men lining the hallway. Another knock, louder this time. Grayson unlocked the door and opened it halfway, keeping his body in the gap. "Can I help you?" he said evenly. The man in the suit didn't smile. "Grayson Cole?" "Yeah. You need to come with us." "Why?" "Ms. Vaughn wants to see you." Grayson blinked. "Who is?" Before the man could answer, another voice cut through the hallway. "That's enough, Marcus." The men in the hallway immediately stepped aside, forming a corridor, and she walked through, the woman from last night. Except she didn't look anything like the terrified, barefoot woman who'd stumbled into the rain. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She wore a tailored black suit that probably cost more than Grayson's rent. Diamond earrings glinted in her ears. Her face was calm, composed, and completely in control. She stopped in front of Grayson's door and met his eyes. "Hi," she said simply. Grayson stared at her. "What the hell is going on? I owe you an explanation." She glanced past him into the apartment. "Can I come in?" "No," Grayson said flatly. "You can explain right here." The woman, Ms. Vaughn, apparently studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough." She folded her hands in front of her. "My name is Selena Vaughn. I'm the founder and CEO of Apex Dynamics. Last night, someone tried to kill me during a private shareholder meeting. The men chasing me weren't random criminals. They were hired by someone inside my own company to make sure I didn't survive the night." Grayson's brain struggled to process what he was hearing. Apex Dynamics, the tech company? Yes. The one worth, what, $15 billion? What, closer to 20, but yes. Grayson laughed. It was a harsh, disbelieving sound. "And you're telling me this because you saved my life," Selena said simply. "And because I need your help." "My help?" Grayson shook his head. "Lady, I don't know what you think I can do for you, but I'm a construction worker. I don't know anything about tech companies or corporate assassinations or whatever the hell you're dealing with." "You were a construction worker," Selena corrected. "You were fired 6 days ago after being falsely accused of embezzlement by a man named Richard Cade." Grayson froze. "How do you know that?" "Because I had my team run a background check on you after last night." Selena's expression softened slightly. "And because Richard Cade works for the same people who tried to kill me." The words hit Grayson like a punch to the gut. "What? Mom?" "You were framed," Selena said quietly. "Deliberately. Cade planted evidence in your company's financial records to make it look like you'd been stealing. He did it to ruin your credibility and make sure that if you ever became a problem, no one would believe you." "Why the hell would I be a problem?" "I don't know yet," Selena admitted. "But I'm going to find out." Grayson stared at her, his mind racing. None of this made sense. None of it added up. And yet, the way Cade had smiled when he fired him, the way the accusations had appeared so suddenly, with no warning, the way Grayson's entire life had been destroyed in less than a week, maybe it did make sense. "What do you want from me?" Grayson asked finally. Selena met his eyes. "I want you to work for me, directly, as my private strategist and security advisor." But Grayson laughed again. "You're insane." "Yeah." "No," Selena said calmly. "I'm desperate. Someone inside my company is trying to destroy everything I've built, and I don't know who I can trust anymore. But last night, when you had every reason to walk away, you helped me. You gave me your last $16 and sent me somewhere safe, even though it cost you everything. How do you Brit? Yesium. I know because I checked the motel this morning and paid them back." Selena pulled an envelope out of her jacket pocket and held it out to him. "Along with what I owe you for last night." Grayson didn't take the envelope. "I don't want your money." "Then take the job." "I don't want the job either." "Then what do you want?" Grayson hesitated. He wanted his life back. He wanted his reputation back. He wanted to look his daughter in the eye and tell her everything was going to be okay without lying through his teeth. But he couldn't say any of that. "I want you to leave," he said finally. Selena studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded and slipped the envelope back into her pocket. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll leave." She turned to go, then paused. "But if you change your mind," she said, glancing back at him, "you know where to find me." And then she was gone. The men in suits followed her down the hallway, and within seconds, the entire building was silent again. Grayson stood in the doorway, staring at the empty hallway, his heart still pounding in his chest. "Dad?" He turned. Mia stood behind him, her eyes wide. "Who was that?" she asked. Grayson opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. He had no idea what to say. "Batsiniti." The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Grayson made breakfast for Mia, scrambled eggs and toast, the last of what they had in the fridge. She asked him again about the cars and the woman, and he told her it was nothing, just a misunderstanding. She didn't look convinced, but she dropped it. After she left for school, Grayson sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at his phone. He pulled up a search for Selena Vaughn. The results flooded in immediately. Headlines, articles, photos. Selena Vaughn named one of Forbes' most influential tech leaders under 35. Apex Dynamics secures $2 billion in Series D funding. The woman behind the AI revolution. There were dozens of photos. Selena at conferences. Selena shaking hands with politicians. Selena standing in front of massive screens displaying complex data visualizations. She looked exactly like the woman who'd shown up at his door that morning. Confident, powerful, untouchable. And yet last night she'd been barefoot and bleeding in the rain, begging a stranger for help. Grayson closed the browser and set his phone down. This wasn't his problem. Whatever conspiracy Selena Vaughn was wrapped up in, it had nothing to do with him. He had his own problems, his own life to fix. Except Richard Cade. Richard. Grayson pulled his phone back out and searched for the name. The results were sparse. A LinkedIn profile. A few mentions in industry newsletters. Nothing substantial. But Selena had said Cade worked for the people trying to kill her, which meant Cade hadn't just framed him. He'd destroyed Grayson's life on purpose, as part of something bigger. Grayson stood up and paced the small kitchen, his mind racing. He thought about the $16, about the look on Selena's face when she'd stumbled into the rain, about the men chasing her with coordinated precision. He thought about Mia, asleep on the couch last night, trusting that her dad would keep her safe. And he thought about the envelope Selena had tried to give him. He didn't want her money, but maybe he wanted answers. 3 hours later, Grayson stood outside the main entrance of Apex Dynamics headquarters in downtown Seattle. The building was massive, glass and steel stretching 40 stories into the sky. A fountain sat in the center of the plaza, surrounded by perfectly manicured landscaping. Men and women in business attire moved in and out of the rotating doors, talking on phones, carrying briefcases. Grayson felt wildly out of place in his worn jeans and jacket. He almost turned around and left. But then he thought about Cade's smile, about the word thief being thrown at him in front of his entire crew. He walked through the doors. The lobby was just as intimidating as the exterior. Marble floors, high ceilings, a reception desk that looked like it cost more than his car. A woman behind the desk looked up as he approached, her expression polite but distant. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Selena Vaughn," Grayson said. The woman's expression didn't change. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Then I'm afraid, tell her Grayson Cole is here." The woman hesitated, then picked up a phone and spoke quietly into it. After a moment, her eyes widened slightly. She set the phone down and smiled, a real smile this time. "Ms. Vaughn will see you immediately. Take the elevator to the 40th floor. Someone will meet you there." Grayson nodded and crossed to the elevators. The ride up felt like it took forever. When the doors opened on the 40th floor, a man in a suit was waiting. "Mr. Cole?" the man said. "This way, please." He led Grayson through a series of hallways lined with glass-walled offices and conference rooms. People glanced up as they passed, curious, but nobody said anything. Finally, they reached a set of double doors at the end of the hall. The man knocked once, then pushed the doors open. Selena's office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. A sleek desk sat in the center of the room, flanked by leather chairs and a couch. Screens lined one wall, displaying live data feeds and graphs. Selena stood by the windows, her back to the door. "Thank you, Marcus," she said without turning around. The man nodded and left, closing the doors behind him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Selena turned. "You came," she said. Grayson crossed his arms. "I want answers." "Okay." "Richard Cade. You said he framed me. Prove it." Selena walked to her desk and tapped something on her computer. One of the screens on the wall lit up, displaying a series of financial documents. "These are the files Cade used to accuse you of embezzlement," Selena said. "Notice the timestamps on the transactions. They all occurred during a 2-week period last month." "Yeah, so?" "So during that same 2-week period, you were off-site supervising a project in Tacoma. Your supervisor confirmed it. There's photographic evidence, time cards, and GPS data from your company truck proving you weren't anywhere near the office." Grayson stared at the screen. "Then how—" "Cade forged the documents," Selena said simply. He created fake transactions, backdated them, and planted them in your company's system. Then he waited until the audit cycle to discover them. Why? Grayson demanded. Why go through all that trouble just to destroy some random construction worker? Selena hesitated. Because you're not random, she said quietly. 3 years ago, you worked on a project for one of my subsidiary companies, a data center in Redmond. You flagged several safety violations and forced the project manager to halt construction until they were fixed. That manager's name was Daniel Carver. I remember Carver, Grayson said slowly. He was a prick, tried to cut corners everywhere. Carver was also working for the same people trying to kill me, Selena said. And when you flagged those violations, you exposed a pattern of fraud that eventually led to his termination and a federal investigation. Grayson's stomach dropped. So Cade framed me because I got Carver fired? What do you mean? No, Selena said. Cade framed you because the people behind this didn't want you looking too closely if they ever needed to move against me. You have a reputation for integrity, for not backing down when something's wrong. That made you a threat. Grayson sank into one of the chairs, his head spinning. This is insane, he muttered. I know. Why are you telling me this? Selena crossed to the windows again, staring out at the city. Because I need someone I can trust, she said. And everyone in this building is a suspect. My executives, my board members, even my head of security. Someone inside this company tried to have me killed, and I don't know who. And you think I can help you figure that out? I think you're the only person who has nothing to gain by lying to me. Grayson stood up. I'm not some corporate detective. I don't know how to investigate billionaires or tech companies or... I'm not asking you to investigate, Selena interrupted. I'm asking you to watch, to listen, to tell me when something doesn't feel right. Why me? Selena turned to face him. Because last night, when you had every reason to save yourself, you helped me instead. You gave me your last $16, Grayson. You didn't know who I was, didn't know what I was running from, but you helped me anyway. Her voice softened. That's the kind of person I need beside me right now. Grayson stared at her, at the vulnerability in her eyes, at the exhaustion beneath the polished exterior. And he realized something. She wasn't lying. She really was desperate. What about my daughter? He asked finally. What about her? If I do this, if I help you, she can't be part of it. Whatever danger you're in, it doesn't touch her. Selena nodded immediately. Agreed. I'll assign a security detail to watch your apartment. Discreetly. She'll never know they're there. And if this goes south, then I'll make sure you and your daughter are taken care of, Selena said firmly, no matter what happens. Grayson looked out the window at the city below, at the life he'd been trying to rebuild, at the mess he'd somehow gotten tangled up in. He thought about Cade's smile, about the word thief, about the last 6 days of hell, and he made his decision. Okay, he said. I'll help you. Selena's shoulders sagged slightly with relief. Thank you. But if you're lying to me, Grayson added, his voice hard, if any of this puts my daughter in danger, I'm gone. No warning, no second chances. Understood. Grayson nodded once. So what do we do first? Selena turned back to the screens on the wall. First, she said, we figure out who wants me dead. Selena's office became Grayson's entire world for the next 72 hours. She set him up at a desk in the corner with access to files, surveillance footage, and financial records that made his head spin. Everything was encrypted, everything required passwords, and everything pointed to the same terrifying conclusion. Someone inside Apex Dynamics had been planning Selena's murder for months. Grayson wasn't used to sitting still. He was used to job sites, to physical labor, to problems he could solve with his hands. But now he stared at spreadsheets and email chains, trying to make sense of corporate language that felt designed to hide the truth rather than reveal it. Selena worked across the room, moving between phone calls and video conferences with the kind of focused intensity that made Grayson understand how she'd built a $20 billion company before turning 31. She barely slept, barely ate. When he asked if she was okay, she just smiled tightly and said she'd sleep when this was over. He didn't push. On the second day, Marcus brought in lunch. Grayson had learned that Marcus was Selena's head of personal security and one of the few people she still trusted completely. The man moved like former military, spoke in clipped sentences, and never smiled. "Eat," Marcus said, setting a sandwich in front of Grayson. "Ms. Vaughn's orders." "She eats yet?" Grayson asked. Marcus glanced at Selena, who was on another call, then back at Grayson. "She will when you make her." "Sure." Grayson snorted. "Yeah, good luck with that." But 20 minutes later, when Selena finally hung up and reached for her laptop again, Grayson stood and walked over with the second sandwich Marcus had brought. "You need to eat," he said, setting it on her desk. Selena looked up at him, surprised. "I'm fine." "You're not. Eat." For a moment, she looked like she was going to argue. Then her expression softened, and she picked up the sandwich. "Thank you," she said quietly. Grayson nodded and went back to his desk. It was a small thing, barely worth mentioning, but something shifted between them in that moment, something unspoken. By the third day, Grayson had started to piece together a timeline. 6 months ago, someone had begun moving money out of Apex Dynamics through a series of shell corporations. Small amounts at first, then larger. The transactions were buried in legitimate expenses, disguised as vendor payments and consulting fees, but the pattern was there once you knew what to look for. 3 months ago, those same shell corporations had purchased shares in Apex's competitors. Not enough to raise red flags, but enough to profit significantly if Apex's stock crashed. And 2 weeks ago, someone had hired the men who tried to kill Selena. "It's a hostile takeover," Grayson said, staring at the screen, "but not a legal one." Selena looked up from her own work. "Explain. Whoever's behind this doesn't want to buy you out. They want to destroy you publicly, tank the stock price, then buy up the company for pennies on the dollar while you're either dead or discredited." Selena crossed to his desk and studied the files he'd pulled up. Her expression grew darker with every line she read. "How did I miss this?" she whispered. "Because you trusted the wrong people," Grayson said bluntly. Selena's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. "We need to find out who's controlling these shell corporations," she said. "Already working on it. But whoever set this up knew what they were doing. The trails are buried deep." Selena pulled up a chair and sat beside him, close enough that Grayson could smell her perfume. Something subtle, expensive. "What do you need?" she asked. "Access to your executive team's personal accounts." Selena's eyes widened. "That's illegal." "So is trying to murder someone," Grayson shot back. "You want answers or not?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I'll have Marcus get you what you need." "It's my spam." An hour later, Grayson had access to email accounts, financial records, and calendar schedules for every senior executive at Apex Dynamics. It was a goldmine, and it was terrifying, because the more he dug, the more he realized that at least 3 of Selena's top executives had been lying to her for months. Adrian Vale, Chief Strategy Officer, Selena's former fiancé. Grayson had seen his photo in one of the files, tall, polished, the kind of guy who looked like he belonged on a magazine cover. He'd broken off the engagement 18 months ago, citing irreconcilable differences, but had stayed on as an executive. His emails were cold, professional, but there was something off about the way he scheduled meetings. Too many gaps, too many unexplained absences. Vanessa Park, Chief Financial Officer. Brilliant, ruthless. She'd been with Apex since the beginning and had helped Selena navigate 3 rounds of venture capital funding. But her financial records showed offshore accounts that didn't match her declared income. And she'd been in contact with several of Apex's competitors over the past 6 months. Daniel Reeves, Chief Operating Officer. Former Navy SEAL turned corporate executive. He ran Apex's day-to-day operations with military precision. But his travel records showed trips to cities where the shell corporations were registered. Trips that weren't on his official calendar. Grayson leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. "It could be any of them," he muttered, "or all of them." Selena appeared beside him, reading over his shoulder. Her face had gone pale. "Adrian?" she said softly. "What about him?" "He's been pushing for a board meeting next week. He said it's routine, but now—" She trailed off, staring at the screen. "Now I'm wondering if he's planning something." "Like what?" "A vote of no confidence. If he can convince the board that I'm unstable or unfit to lead, they can remove me as CEO. Grayson frowned. Can they do that? Technically, yes, if they have enough votes. Selena's hands clenched into fists. And if I'm dead or missing, they don't even need a vote. The board can appoint an interim CEO immediately, which would be Adrian, most likely. Grayson stood and paced the office, thinking. Okay, so Adrian's a suspect, but we need proof. Something concrete that ties him to the assassination attempt or the financial fraud. How do we get that? Grayson stopped pacing and looked at her. We make him think he's winning. Selena's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? We set a trap. Give him an opportunity to make a move, and when he does, we catch him in the act. That's dangerous. Yeah, Grayson said. But right now it's the only play we've got. Selena studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. What do you need? Access to the shareholder meeting next week, and a wire. That evening, Grayson went home for the first time in 3 days. Mia was in the living room doing homework when he walked in. She looked up, grinned, and ran over to hug him. Where have you been? She demanded. Working, Grayson said, hugging her back. Sorry, kiddo. Got caught up in something. Is it that lady from the other day? Grayson hesitated. Yeah, kind of. Is she nice? She's complicated. Mia pulled back and studied his face with the kind of intensity only an 8-year-old could manage. Do you like her? What? No, I mean, she's fine, but you're blushing, Mia said, grinning. I am not. You totally are. Grayson groaned and ruffled her hair. Finish your homework. Mia laughed and went back to the couch, clearly pleased with herself. Grayson made dinner, spaghetti, because it was cheap and Mia would actually eat it, and they sat together at the small kitchen table. Mia talked about school, about a boy in her class who kept pulling her hair, about a science project she was excited about. It felt normal, safe. For a little while, Grayson let himself forget about conspiracies and billionaires and assassination attempts. He just listened to his daughter talk and pretended everything was okay. But later that night, after Mia had gone to bed, Grayson sat alone in the dark living room, staring at his phone. He thought about Selena, about the exhaustion in her eyes, about the way she'd thanked him for the sandwich like it was the first kind thing anyone had done for her in months. He thought about Adrian Vale and Vanessa Park and Daniel Reeves, about the men who'd chased Selena through the rain. And he thought about Mia, asleep in her room, trusting that her dad would keep her safe. He wasn't sure he could do that anymore, but he was damn well going to try. The next morning, Marcus picked him up in one of the black SUVs. Ms. Vaughn wants you at headquarters by 8, Marcus said as Grayson climbed into the passenger seat. What's happening? Shareholders' meeting got moved up. It's today. Grayson's stomach dropped. Today? I thought it was next week. Adrian called an emergency session, said there's a critical issue that needs immediate board attention. Why am some... Best. He's making his move. Marcus nodded grimly. That's what Ms. Vaughn thinks. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Marcus glanced over at him. You care about her, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Grayson frowned. I barely know her. Doesn't matter. You care. Why do you say that? Because you're still here. Marcus turned onto the highway. Most people would have walked away by now, taken the money and run. But you're still here. Grayson didn't have a response to that. When they arrived at Apex headquarters, the building was already buzzing with activity. Executives moved through the hallways with grim expressions. Security had been doubled. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Selena was waiting in her office, dressed in a dark blue suit that made her look every bit the powerful CEO she was. But Grayson could see the strain in her face, the sleepless nights catching up with her. You ready? She asked. As I'll ever be. She handed him a small device, a wire, disguised as a button on his shirt. This will transmit everything you hear directly to Marcus. He'll be monitoring from the security office. What about you? I'll be in the boardroom. Adrian's called for a vote to remove me as CEO. He's claiming I'm mentally unstable and unfit to lead. Grayson's jaw clenched. On what grounds? Grayson's hiss. The assassination attempt. He's arguing that my paranoia is affecting my judgment and putting the company at risk. Eating. That's insane. That's Adrian. Selena's voice was bitter. He's been planning this for months, maybe longer. So what's the play? You'll be in the room posing as my legal advisor. Listen to everything. If Adrian says anything that connects him to the fraud or the assassination attempt, we've got him. And if he doesn't? Selena met his eyes. Then I lose everything. Well, the boardroom was on the top floor, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a table that could seat 30 people. When Grayson and Selena entered, 12 board members were already seated, along with several executives he recognized from the files. Adrian Vale sat at the far end of the table, looking calm and confident. When he saw Selena, he smiled. It was the kind of smile that made Grayson want to punch him. "Selena," Adrian said smoothly, "thank you for joining us." "Let's skip the pleasantries, Adrian," Selena said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "You called this meeting. Make your case." Adrian stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've called this emergency session because I believe Apex Dynamics is facing a leadership crisis. Over the past week, our CEO has made several erratic decisions, including hiring unvetted personnel," he glanced at Grayson, "and making unfounded accusations against senior executives." "Those accusations are not unfounded," Selena said coldly. "Can you prove that?" Adrian challenged. "Can you provide evidence that anyone in this room has acted against the company's interests?" Selena's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Adrian continued. "Furthermore, Ms. Vaughn has claimed that someone attempted to assassinate her, yet she has refused to involve law enforcement or provide any substantive evidence to support this claim. Instead, she surrounded herself with private security and retreated into paranoia." "That's not what happened," Grayson said, unable to stop himself. Adrian turned to him, his expression condescending. "And you are?" "Someone who was there." "Yeah. Yes. The construction worker." Adrian's smile widened. "Tell me, Mr. Cole, what exactly qualifies you to advise the CEO of a $20 billion tech company?" "I don't need qualifications to know when someone's lying," Grayson shot back. The room went silent. Adrian's smile faltered for just a second. Then it returned, colder than before. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," he said, addressing the board. "Selena has brought in an outsider with no corporate experience and is using him to validate her paranoia. This is not the behavior of a stable leader." One of the board members, a silver-haired woman named Helen Briggs, spoke up. "Selena, I have to say, Adrian makes a valid point. We've all been concerned about your state of mind lately." "My state of mind is fine," Selena said through gritted teeth. "Then where's the evidence?" another board member asked. "If someone really tried to kill you, why haven't you gone to the police?" "Because the people behind this have connections," Selena said. "Going to the police would have tipped them off before we could gather proof." "Proof you still haven't provided," Adrian said quietly. Grayson felt his heart pounding. This was spiraling. Adrian was too smooth, too prepared. He'd anticipated every argument Selena could make and countered it before she even opened her mouth. They were losing. Selena seemed to realize it too. Her hands trembled slightly on the table. "I move for a vote," Adrian said, "to remove Selena Vaughn as CEO of Apex Dynamics, effective immediately, on the grounds of mental instability and conduct detrimental to the company." "Seconded," said another executive. Daniel Reeves. Grayson's blood ran cold. Helen Briggs looked uncomfortable. "Selena, do you have anything else to say before we vote?" Selena stood slowly. For a moment she looked lost, defeated. Then her eyes met Grayson's, and something in her expression changed. "Yes," she said quietly. "I do." She walked to the screen on the wall and tapped something on her tablet. The screen lit up, displaying a series of financial transactions. "These are wire transfers made from Apex Dynamics to a series of shell corporations over the past 6 months," Selena said, her voice steady now. "The corporations are registered in the Cayman Islands, Delaware, and Singapore, and they're controlled by 3 people in this room." Adrian's smile vanished. "You're bluffing," he said. "Am I?" Selena pulled up another file. "This is an email from Daniel Reeves to a contact in Beijing offering to sell classified AI research developed by Apex Dynamics. The sale was worth $50 million. Reeves shot to his feet. "That's a lie." The email is time-stamped and authenticated, Selena said calmly, as is this one. She pulled up another file. From Vanessa Park to a venture capital firm, detailing plans to short Apex's stock immediately before a planned crisis event. Vanessa's face went white. The boardroom erupted in chaos. Board members shouted questions. Executives denied everything. And through it all, Adrian Vale sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. Then he started clapping, slowly, deliberately. The room fell silent. "Well done, Selena," Adrian said softly. "You've been busy." "You tried to have me killed," Selena said, her voice shaking with rage. "No," Adrian said, standing. "I tried to save this company from you by committing fraud, by selling our research to foreign buyers, by doing what needed to be done." Adrian's voice hardened. "You built Apex on idealism and naivety, Selena. But this industry doesn't reward idealism. It rewards results. And you were too weak to do what was necessary. So you decided to destroy me instead. I decided to take control." Adrian walked toward her slowly. "You were always brilliant, Selena, but you were never ruthless. And in this world, that's a fatal flaw." Grayson stepped between them, his fists clenched. "Back off," he said quietly. Adrian looked at him with barely concealed contempt. "Or what? You'll hit me? Go ahead. Assault me in front of the entire board. That'll look great for Selena's case." "Grayson," Selena said softly, "don't." Grayson didn't move. Adrian smiled. "You think you've won, don't you? You think showing them a few files changes anything?" He looked around the room. "Half this board knew what I was doing. They approved it. Because they understood that sometimes, to build something great, you have to destroy what came before." Helen Briggs stood, her face pale. "Adrian, that's not—" "Shut up, Helen," Adrian snapped. "You signed off on the Beijing deal yourself." The room exploded again. Selena looked at Marcus, who'd entered quietly during the chaos. He nodded once. "It's all recorded," Marcus said. "Every word." Adrian's expression finally cracked. For the first time, Grayson saw fear in his eyes. "You can't use that in court," Adrian said. "It's illegal." "Maybe," Selena said, "but I can leak it to every media outlet in the country. And by tomorrow morning, everyone will know exactly what you are, Shab." Adrian's hands clenched into fists. Then, without warning, he lunged towards Selena. Grayson moved on instinct. He caught Adrian by the shoulder and shoved him backward. Adrian stumbled, caught himself on the table, and whirled around with murder in his eyes. "You made a mistake getting involved in this," Adrian hissed at Grayson. "Both of you." "Is that a threat?" Grayson asked. Adrian smiled coldly. "It's a promise." "Well, oh, man." Marcus stepped forward, flanked by 2 security officers. "Adrian Vale, you're under corporate detention pending a full investigation. You're also banned from all Apex facilities, effective immediately." "You can't do this," Adrian said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "I just did," Selena said quietly. Security escorted Adrian out of the boardroom. Reeves and Vanessa followed, both shouting protests that nobody listened to. When the room finally emptied, leaving only Selena, Grayson, Marcus, and a few shell-shocked board members, Selena sank into her chair and put her face in her hands. "It's over," she whispered. "Not yet," Marcus said grimly. "Adrian's not the type to go quietly." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've exposed him, but we haven't stopped him. And men like Adrian always have a contingency plan." Grayson's stomach twisted. "You think he's going to retaliate?" "I think he's going to burn everything down rather than admit defeat." Selena looked up, her eyes wide with fear, and Grayson realized with sickening clarity that this wasn't over. It was just beginning. That night, Grayson returned home to find Mia exactly where he'd left her that morning, curled up on the couch watching cartoons. She grinned when she saw him and jumped up to hug him. "Did you have a good day?" she asked. Grayson hugged her tightly. "Yeah, kiddo, I did." It was a lie, but some lies were necessary. Later, after Mia went to bed, Grayson stood at the window, staring out at the dark street below. Marcus had assured him that security was watching the building, that Mia was safe. But Grayson couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. His phone buzzed, a text from Selena. "Thank you for today. I couldn't have done this without you." Grayson stared at the message for a long time before replying. We're not done yet. Her response came immediately. I know. Grayson set the phone down and closed his eyes. Somewhere out there, Adrian Vale was planning his next move, and Grayson had no idea what it would be. The call came at 2 in the morning. Grayson jerked awake, his phone vibrating violently on the nightstand. He grabbed it, heart already pounding, and saw Marcus's name on the screen. What happened? Grayson answered, his voice rough with sleep. Get to your daughter's room, now. Grayson was already moving, stumbling out of bed and down the hall. He shoved Mia's door open, his hands shaking. She was still there, still asleep, curled up under her blankets with her stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest. Grayson's knees nearly buckled with relief. She's fine, he said into the phone. What the hell is going on? Adrian's gone, Marcus said. He posted bail 2 hours ago and disappeared. We've got teams searching, but he's in the wind. How did he post bail? You said he was under corporate detention. He had lawyers waiting, good ones. They argued that the evidence was inadmissible and got him released pending investigation. Marcus's voice was tight with frustration. Marcus's. We're doing everything we can to find him, but until we do, you and your daughter need to be somewhere safe. Define safe. Anywhere Adrian doesn't know about. Grayson ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. I don't have anywhere. I can't afford a hotel, and every friend I've got lives in the same neighborhood. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Ms. Vaughn has a private residence outside the city. She wants you and Mia to stay there until this is over. I'm not putting my daughter in the middle of this. She's already in the middle of it, Marcus said bluntly. Adrian knows who you are. He knows where you live. And if he's desperate enough, he'll use Mia to get to Selena. The words hit Grayson like a fist to the gut. Pack a bag, Marcus said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. Grayson stood in Mia's doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep. She looked so small, so fragile, and he was supposed to protect her from billionaires and corporate conspiracies and men who hired assassins like it was nothing. He felt completely out of his depth. But he didn't have a choice. He went to her bedside and gently shook her shoulder. Mia, wake up, sweetheart. She stirred, blinking up at him in confusion. Dad? We need to go somewhere for a little while, just you and me. Where? Somewhere safe. Mia rubbed her eyes, still half asleep. Is it because of that lady? Grayson hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, it's because of her. Is she in trouble? Kind of. Are we in trouble? Grayson forced a smile. No, but we're going to help make sure she stays safe, okay? Mia studied his face with that unnerving intensity kids had, like she could see right through him. Then she nodded and climbed out of bed. Okay. 20 minutes later, Marcus pulled up in a different vehicle this time, a dark sedan with tinted windows. Grayson carried a hastily packed duffel bag in one hand and held Mia's hand with the other. She was still in her pajamas, wrapped in a jacket that was too big for her. Marcus opened the back door. Get in. Mia climbed in first, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Grayson followed, his nerves stretched thin. As they pulled away from the apartment building, Grayson glanced back through the rear window. The street looked normal, empty, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Where's Selena? Grayson asked. Already at the house, Marcus said, and asked. Already at Chatshaw. She left headquarters 3 hours ago. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Because she didn't want you to worry. Well, that worked great. Marcus didn't respond. They drove in silence through the dark streets of Seattle, heading north out of the city. Mia fell asleep against Grayson's shoulder within the first 10 minutes, exhausted and confused. Grayson kept his arm around her, staring out the window and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. After nearly an hour, they turned onto a private road that wound through dense forest. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating tall pines and underbrush. Finally, they reached a gate. Marcus entered a code, and it swung open. The house sat at the end of a long driveway surrounded by trees. It wasn't massive or ostentatious like Grayson had expected. It was modern, all glass and wood, with warm lights glowing from the windows. Understated, private, Marcus parked near the front entrance. "Welcome to Miss Vaughn's sanctuary." Grayson carefully lifted Mia, who barely stirred, and followed Marcus inside. The interior was just as understated as the exterior. Clean lines, minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the forest. It felt more like a retreat than a billionaire's hideout. Selena appeared from a hallway, dressed in jeans and a sweater. No makeup. No jewelry. She looked younger like this. More human. "You made it," she said quietly. "Didn't have much choice," Grayson replied, shifting Mia's weight in his arms. "Where can I put her down?" Selena led him down the hall to a guest bedroom. It was simple but comfortable, with a large bed and soft lighting. Grayson laid Mia down gently, pulling the blankets over her. She mumbled something in her sleep and rolled over, still holding her rabbit. Grayson stood there for a moment, just watching her breathe. "She'll be safe here," Selena said from the doorway. "You keep saying that, Raze," Grayson said without turning around. "But Adrian's still out there." "I know. And you think he's coming after us." "I think he's going to do whatever it takes to win." Selena's voice was strained. "And I'm sorry. I never meant for this to touch your daughter." Grayson finally turned to face her. "But it did." "I know." They stood there in the dim hallway, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. "I should have walked away that night," Grayson said quietly. "I should have let those men find you and stayed out of it." "Would you have?" Selena asked. Grayson opened his mouth to say yes, but the word wouldn't come. Because the truth was, he wouldn't have. Even knowing everything he knew now, he still would have helped her. "No," he admitted finally. "I wouldn't have." Something softened in Selena's expression. "Why?" "Because you looked terrified, and I couldn't just walk away from that." "Oh." Selena stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. "You're a good man, Grayson Cole." "I'm a broke, unemployed single dad who got himself tangled up in something way over his head," Grayson said. "That's not good. That's stupid." "No," Selena said quietly. "That's brave." Before Grayson could respond, Marcus appeared at the end of the hall. "Ms. Vaughn, we've got a problem." "What is it? They followed Marcus to the main living area, where he'd set up a laptop on the dining table. The screen showed surveillance footage from multiple angles around the property. "What are we looking at?" Selena asked. Marcus pointed to one of the feeds. "That car, it's been parked on the access road for the past 20 minutes. No movement, no lights, just sitting there." Grayson's stomach dropped. "You think it's Adrian?" "I think we need to assume it is until we know otherwise." Marcus tapped a few keys, pulling up additional feeds. "I've got 2 security officers patrolling the perimeter, but if Adrian brought a team, we're outnumbered." "Call the police," Grayson said. "And tell them what?" Marcus replied. "That a man who posted bail legally is sitting on a public road? He tried to have Selena killed, which we can't prove in a way that'll hold up in court. Not yet." Marcus looked at Selena. "We need to move you somewhere else. Now." "No," Selena said firmly. "If we run, he'll just follow. And next time, we might not see him coming." "So what do you want to do?" Grayson demanded. "Wait for him to break in?" "I want to end this," Selena said. Her voice was steady, but Grayson could see the fear in her eyes. "Tonight, one way or another." Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but he just nodded. "All right, then we need a plan." They spent the next 30 minutes preparing. Marcus armed himself and positioned the 2 security officers at strategic points around the property. Selena pulled up every file, every piece of evidence they had on Adrian, and uploaded it to a secure server with instructions to release it automatically if anything happened to her. "Insurance," she explained when Grayson asked. "If Adrian thinks killing me will bury the truth, he's wrong." Grayson checked on Mia 3 times. She was still asleep, oblivious to the danger circling outside. He wished he could keep her that way forever. At 4 in the morning, the car on the access road finally moved. Marcus spotted it first. "We've got activity. 3 vehicles now. They're heading toward the gate." Grayson's heart hammered in his chest. How many people? "At least 6 that I can see. Maybe more." Selena stood beside the window, staring out at the dark forest. Her hands were trembling, but her voice stayed calm. "Let them in." "What?" Grayson and Marcus said in unison. "Let them in," Selena repeated. "Open the gate." "That's insane," Grayson said. "It's the only way." Selena turned to face them. "If we lock them out, they'll just wait or come back later. But if we let them in, we control the environment. We know the layout. We have the advantage." Marcus looked skeptical, but pulled out his phone. "All units, fall back to positions inside the house. We're letting them come to us." Grayson wanted to argue, wanted to grab Mia and run. But he knew Selena was right. This had to end tonight. Marcus opened the gate remotely. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, headlights appeared through the trees. 3 black SUVs rolled up the driveway and parked in front of the house. The engines cut off. Doors opened, and Adrian Vale stepped out, flanked by 8 men in tactical gear. Grayson felt his blood run cold. These weren't corporate security. These were professionals. The kind of people who did things that couldn't be undone. Adrian walked up to the front door and knocked. 3 deliberate raps. Selena walked over and opened it. "Hello, Adrian," she said calmly. Adrian smiled. It was the same charming smile Grayson had seen in the boardroom, but there was nothing charming about it now. It was the smile of the man who'd already won. "Selena," Adrian said, "I was hoping we could talk." "About what?" "About how this ends." "It ends with you in prison," Selena said. "We have everything, the financial records, the emails, your confession in the boardroom." "Aber short." "Do you?" Adrian tilted his head. "Because it seems to me that all of that evidence is inadmissible, illegally obtained, coerced under duress. No prosecutor in the country would touch it." "The media will." "The media." Adrian laughed. "You really think leaking corporate espionage files to journalists will save you? All that'll do is destroy Apex's reputation and tank the stock price, which, coincidentally, benefits me." Selena's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" "I want you to step down as CEO, quietly, publicly cite health reasons, hand control of the company over to me. And in exchange, I'll forget about tonight. Forget about the accusations. Forget about everything. And if I refuse?" Adrian's smile widened. "Then I stop being reasonable." He gestured to the men behind him. One of them stepped forward, holding a tablet. Adrian took it and turned the screen toward Selena. It showed surveillance footage of Mia, at school, at the playground, walking home. Grayson felt rage explode through his chest. He stepped forward, fists clenched, but Marcus grabbed his arm and held him back. "You son of a—" Grayson started. "I'm a businessman," Adrian interrupted, "and I'm very good at identifying leverage. Your daughter is safe. For now. But if Selena doesn't cooperate, that could change very quickly." Selena's face had gone white. "You're threatening a child. I'm offering you a choice," Adrian said. "Apex Dynamics or her." The silence that followed was suffocating. Grayson looked at Selena, at the fear and fury warring in her eyes, at the impossible decision Adrian had just forced on her, and he realized something. Adrian had already lost. He just didn't know it yet. "She's not giving you anything," Grayson said, his voice low and dangerous. Adrian turned to him, amused. "Excuse me? You heard me. Selena's not stepping down. She's not handing you the company, and you're not touching my daughter. And what exactly are you going to do to stop me?" Grayson stepped forward, ignoring Marcus's warning grip. "I'm going to tell you a story about a guy named Richard Cade. You remember him?" Adrian's smile faltered slightly. "Cade framed me," Grayson continued, "destroyed my career, made sure I'd never work in construction again. And you know what? At first I believed him, thought maybe I'd made a mistake, thought maybe I deserved it. Fascinating," Adrian said dryly, "but I don't see—" "But then Selena showed me the truth," Grayson interrupted. "Showed me that Cade was working for you, that everything that happened to me was part of your plan. And you want to know what I realized?" Adrian said nothing. "I realized that you're scared," Grayson said. "You've been scared this whole time, because Selena built something real, something that matters. And you couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand that she did it without you, so you tried to tear it down. Di anti bombachinamo. I'm not scared of her, Sess, Adrian said coldly. Yeah, you are. That's why you're here. That's why you brought 8 guys with guns. Because deep down you know you can't beat her. Not fairly. So you resort to threats and intimidation and targeting innocent kids. Adrian's expression darkened. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, Grayson shot back. I know that every piece of evidence we have on you is backed up in 3 separate locations. I know that if anything happens to Selena, or to me, or to my daughter, it all gets released. To the media, to the FBI, to everyone. You're bluffing. Try me. For the first time, Adrian looked uncertain. His eyes flicked to Selena, searching for confirmation. She nodded. He's telling the truth. You're finished, Adrian. The only question is how much damage you do on your way out. Adrian stared at them for a long moment. Then he started laughing. It was a harsh, bitter sound. You really think this is over? He said. You think you've won? Yeah, Grayson said. I do. Adrian's laughter cut off abruptly. His expression went cold. Dead. Then you're both idiots. He turned to the men behind him and nodded once. They moved fast. Too fast. One of them grabbed Selena, wrenching her arm behind her back. Another lunged for Grayson. Marcus reacted instantly, pulling a weapon, but 3 guns were already pointed at his head. Drop it, Adrian said calmly. Marcus hesitated, then slowly lowered his weapon and set it on the ground. Adrian walked over and picked it up, examining it with detached interest. Then he looked at Grayson. You know what your problem is, Adrian said. You think this is some kind of movie, where the good guys win because they're good. But this is real life, and in real life, the people with power get to decide how the story ends. He raised the gun, pointed it at Grayson's chest. And I'm ending this story right now. Time seemed to slow. Grayson saw Adrian's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Selena's face contort in horror, heard Marcus shout something, and then he heard something else. Sirens. Distant at first. Then louder, closer. Adrian froze. Red and blue lights appeared through the trees, flooding the driveway. Car doors slammed. Voices shouted commands. FBI, drop your weapons! Adrian's face twisted with rage. He swung the gun towards Selena instead. Grayson didn't think. He just moved. He threw himself forward, slamming into Adrian's side. The gun went off, the shot deafening in the enclosed space. Grayson felt the impact, felt something punch into his shoulder, hot and sharp. But he didn't stop. He drove Adrian backward, into the wall, using every ounce of strength he had left. Adrian struggled, tried to bring the gun around again, but Grayson grabbed his wrist and slammed it against the wall until the weapon clattered to the floor. Federal agents swarmed through the door, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Adrian's men dropped their guns and raised their hands. Within seconds, the house was filled with law enforcement. Grayson staggered backward, his shoulder screaming in pain. Blood soaked through his shirt. Selena was beside him immediately, her hands on his face. Grayson, look at me. Is Mia okay? He asked, his voice slurred. She's fine. She's still asleep. You're okay. You're going to be okay. Ipats. But Grayson wasn't sure about that. His vision was blurring. His legs felt weak. He heard Adrian shouting something, heard handcuffs click, heard Selena's voice, desperate and frightened, calling for a medic. And then everything went dark. When Grayson woke up, he was in a hospital bed. The room was quiet except for the steady beep of a heart monitor. Sunlight streamed through the window. His shoulder was bandaged and throbbing, but the pain was distant, muted by medication. Mia was asleep in a chair beside the bed, curled up under a hospital blanket. Her stuffed rabbit sat in her lap. And Selena was there too, standing by the window, staring out at the city below. Grayson tried to speak, but his throat was dry. He coughed. Selena turned immediately. Relief flooded her face. You're awake, she said, crossing to his bedside. Yeah, Grayson rasped. What happened? What, my mom. You got shot. The bullet went through your shoulder. Clean entry and exit. The doctor said you were lucky. Doesn't feel lucky. Selena smiled faintly. You saved my life. Seemed like the thing to do. Adrian? In custody, along with everyone who was with him. The FBI arrested 14 people total, including Vanessa Park and Daniel Reeves. Selena's voice was steady, but Grayson could see the exhaustion in her eyes. It's over, Grayson. Really over this time. Matt. Grayson looked at Mia, still asleep in the chair. How is she? Confused, scared, but okay. Selena sat down on the edge of the bed. She hasn't left your side since we got here. How long have I been out? 2 days. Grayson closed his eyes. 2 days. 2 days of Mia sitting here waiting for him to wake up. 2 days of not knowing if he was going to be okay. I'm sorry, Selena said quietly, for all of this, for dragging you into my mess, for putting your daughter in danger. Stop, Grayson said. You didn't drag me into anything. I made a choice. A choice that almost got you killed. Yeah, well... Grayson opened his eyes and looked at her. I'd make it again. Selena stared at him, something unreadable in her expression. Then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. Thank you, she whispered. They sat like that for a long moment, holding hands in the quiet hospital room while Mia slept and the city hummed beyond the window. And for the first time in weeks, Grayson felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Grayson spent 5 more days in the hospital before the doctors cleared him to go home. His shoulder was still stiff and the pain medication made him foggy, but he could move his arm without wanting to scream, which felt like progress. Mia had barely left his side the entire time, sleeping in the chair beside his bed and only going home when Selena or Marcus insisted she needed a real shower and actual food. On the morning of his discharge, Selena arrived with clean clothes and a wheelchair that Grayson immediately refused. Hospital policy, the nurse said cheerfully, blocking his path. You don't walk out, you ride. I got shot in the shoulder, not the legs, Grayson argued. Hospital policy, the nurse repeated, her smile unwavering. Selena tried not to laugh and failed. Grayson shot her a look. Don't, he warned. I didn't say anything, she said innocently. Mia giggled from her spot near the door, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Grayson sighed and lowered himself into the wheelchair, grumbling the entire time. The nurse wheeled him out while Selena walked beside them, carrying the bag of his belongings. Mia skipped ahead, clearly relieved to finally be leaving the hospital. When they reached the entrance, a black SUV was waiting. Not the armored kind this time, just a normal vehicle with Marcus behind the wheel. Grayson climbed out of the wheelchair, wincing slightly, and got into the back seat with Mia. Selena slid in beside them. Where to? Marcus asked. Grayson gave him his apartment address. The drive back felt surreal, like the past few weeks had been some kind of fever dream, and now he was waking up to find everything exactly the way it used to be. Except it wasn't. Nothing was the same. He'd been shot. Adrian was in federal custody, and somehow Grayson had become part of Selena Vaughn's world in a way he still couldn't fully comprehend. When they pulled up in front of his building, Selena got out with them. You don't have to come up, Grayson said. I know, Selena replied, but I want to. Mia ran ahead up the stairs, excited to be home. Grayson followed more slowly, his shoulder protesting every step. Selena stayed beside him, not offering help but close enough that he knew she would if he asked. Inside the apartment, everything was exactly as they'd left it. The dishes still in the sink, Mia's homework still on the coffee table. It felt like stepping back in time. Mia immediately disappeared into her room to reunite with her toys. Grayson stood in the middle of the living room, feeling oddly lost. You should rest, Selena said quietly. I've been resting for 5 days. Then you should rest some more. Grayson looked at her, really looked at her. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater again, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping much either. What happens now? He asked. Selena walked to the window, staring out at the street below. The FBI is building their case against Adrian. They've already charged him with conspiracy, attempted murder, corporate fraud, and about a dozen other things. He's not getting out this time. That's not what I meant. Selena turned to face him. I know. They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. I need to go back to Apex, Selena said finally. The board is in chaos. Half the executives are under investigation. The media is having a field day. I need to rebuild. Okay, but I don't want you to disappear. Grayson blinked. What? I don't want you to disappear, Selena repeated, her voice soft. These past few weeks, you've been the only person I could trust completely. The only person who didn't want something from me. And I know you have your own life and your daughter, and I have no right to ask you for anything else, but Selena, Grayson interrupted gently. What are you asking? She met his eyes. I'm asking if you'll stay. Not as an employee, not as some kind of corporate advisor, just as someone I can talk to. Someone who'll tell me the truth even when it's hard to hear. You want me to be your friend? I want you to be whatever you're willing to be. Grayson's heart did something complicated in his chest. He thought about the past few weeks, about the danger and the fear, and the moments where he genuinely believed they weren't going to survive. But he also thought about the quiet moments, about Selena thanking him for a sandwich, about the way she'd looked at Mia with something like longing, about the way she'd held his hand in the hospital. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Relief flooded Selena's face. You mean that? Yeah, I mean it. Before either of them could say anything else, Mia came running back into the living room, dragging a large drawing pad. Look what I made at the hospital, she announced, flipping it open. The pages were filled with crayon drawings. Most of them were of Grayson lying in a hospital bed with Mia sitting beside him. But the last one made Grayson's throat tighten. It showed 3 people, a man, a woman, and a little girl, all holding hands. Mia had labeled them carefully in her crooked handwriting. Dad, Selena, me. Do you like it? Mia asked, looking up at Selena with hopeful eyes. Selena knelt down so she was eye level with Mia. I love it, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Can I keep it? Really? Really? Mia beamed and carefully tore the page out, handing it to Selena like it was the most precious thing in the world. Selena took it with both hands. Thank you, Mia. I'm going to hang this in my office. You promise? I promise. Mia threw her arms around Selena's neck, hugging her tightly. Selena's eyes went wide with surprise. Then she wrapped her arms around Mia and held her close. When they finally pulled apart, Selena's eyes were suspiciously bright. She stood and cleared her throat. I should go. Let you both rest. You could stay for dinner, Grayson offered. If you want. It's just going to be spaghetti, but I'd like that, Selena said quickly. If you're sure, I'm sure. They ordered takeout instead because Grayson's shoulder made cooking impossible. Mia insisted on setting the table like it was a formal dinner, complete with paper napkins folded into triangles. Selena sat at the small kitchen table looking completely out of place and somehow perfectly at home at the same time. They ate and talked about normal things, about Mia's school, about a science project she was excited about a book Selena had been trying to read but kept falling asleep halfway through because work was exhausting. It was simple, easy, and Grayson realized with startling clarity that this was the most relaxed he'd seen Selena since the night they met. After dinner, Mia dragged Selena to her room to show her every toy she owned. Grayson cleaned up the kitchen one-handed, listening to Mia's excited chatter and Selena's soft responses. By the time Selena finally left, it was nearly 9 o'clock. Marcus was waiting outside in the SUV, patient as ever. Thank you for tonight, Selena said at the door. I needed that more than you know. Any time, Grayson said. She started to leave, then paused. Grayson? Yeah? When I said I didn't want you to disappear, I meant it. I know things are complicated and you have Mia, and I'm still trying to fix the mess Adrian left behind, but I don't want this to be the last time I see you. It won't be. How do you know? Because you still owe me $16, Grayson said with a small smile. Selena laughed. It was a real laugh, bright and unguarded. I gave you that money back weeks ago. Did you? I don't remember, Kaki. She shook her head, still smiling. Good night, Grayson. Good night, Selena. He watched from the window as she climbed into the SUV and drove away. Mia appeared beside him, rubbing her eyes. Is Selena your girlfriend? She asked sleepily. Grayson's brain short-circuited. What? No, we're just friends. Mom would have liked her, Mia said matter-of-factly. Grayson's chest tightened. Mia almost never talked about her mother. She'd been so young when she died that most of her memories were vague and dreamlike. Yeah, Grayson said softly.
She would have. Mia yawned. I like her too. I know you do, kiddo. You should ask her to come over again.
Maybe I will. Good. Mia hugged him around the waist, careful of his injured shoulder. I'm glad you're okay, Dad. Me too, sweetheart, me too. The next few weeks passed in a strange kind of limbo. Grayson's shoulder healed slowly. Physical therapy was painful and frustrating, but he pushed through it because sitting around doing nothing made him feel useless. He applied for jobs half-heartedly, knowing his reputation in the construction world was still trashed, despite everything that had come out about Cade and Adrian. Selena texted him almost every day. Small things. Asking how he was feeling, sending photos of the drawing Mia had made, now framed and hanging in her office, complaining about board meetings and incompetent executives. Sometimes they talked on the phone late at night after Mia had gone to bed. Conversations that started about nothing and stretched for hours. Selena told him about growing up as the daughter of immigrants who'd sacrificed everything to give her opportunities. About building Apex from a tiny startup in a garage to a multi-billion-dollar company. About the loneliness that came with success. Grayson told her about his late wife. About the accident that had taken her too soon. About the years of struggling to raise Mia alone while battling grief he didn't know how to process. They were honest with each other in ways neither of them had been with anyone else in years. And slowly, something shifted between them. It was Mia who finally forced the issue. 6 weeks after Grayson got out of the hospital, Mia's school had a soccer game. Grayson had been coaching her team informally since the start of the season, and despite his injured shoulder, he wasn't about to miss it. The game was on a Saturday morning. Grayson stood on the sidelines with the other parents, shouting encouragement while trying not to move his arm too much. Mia scored a goal in the second half. Nothing fancy, just a lucky bounce that rolled past the goalie. But she turned and looked directly at Grayson, her face lit up with pure joy. And then she pointed. Not at Grayson, behind him. He turned. Selena stood at the edge of the field wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap like she was trying to go incognito. It wasn't working. Several parents were already staring. She waved at Mia, who waved back enthusiastically. Grayson walked over, his heart doing that complicated thing again. What are you doing here? He asked. Mia texted me, Selena said, pulling out her phone to show him. She said her game was today and I should come watch. Grayson blinked. Mia texted you? You gave her a phone? Yeah, but only for emergencies. She said this was an emergency. Selena smiled. Quote, I need you here or Dad's going to be sad. Grayson covered his face with his good hand. I'm going to kill her. Don't, Selena said, laughing. She's sweet. She's a menace. Maybe, but she's right. Grayson lowered his hand. About what? About me needing to be here. Selena's smile softened. I've been so focused on rebuilding Apex that I haven't taken a single day off in 6 weeks, and when Mia texted, I realized I didn't want to miss this. It's just a kid's soccer game. No, Selena said quietly. It's not. They stood side by side for the rest of the game, watching Mia run around the field with her teammates. Every time Mia looked over, she grinned and waved at both of them. After the game, Mia ran over, sweaty and beaming. Did you see my goal? She demanded. We both did, Grayson said. You did great. Can Selena come to lunch with us? Mia asked, turning to Selena with pleading eyes. Please? Selena glanced at Grayson, uncertain. You should come, Grayson said. If you want. I want, Selena said. They went to a diner near the soccer field. Nothing fancy, just burgers and fries and milkshakes. Mia dominated the conversation, talking nonstop about the game and her friends and a science project she was working on. Selena listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Mia's stories. Watching them together made something ache in Grayson's chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. After lunch, they walked Selena back to her car. Marcus was waiting nearby, ever vigilant. Thank you for coming, Grayson said. Thank you for letting me, Selena replied. Are you coming to my next game? Mia asked. Selena knelt down. Do you want me to? Yes. Then I will. Mia hugged her, and Selena hugged her back without hesitation. When Mia ran ahead to the car, Selena stood and looked at Grayson. This is becoming a habit, she said. What is? Me not wanting to leave.
Is that a bad thing? I don't know, Selena admitted. I'm not very good at this. At what? At letting people in. At wanting things that aren't work-related.
At feeling like maybe I could have something normal.
Grayson stepped closer. You think this is normal? No, Selena said, a small smile tugging at her lips. But maybe it could be. Yeah, Grayson said softly. Maybe it could.
They stood there on the sidewalk, the afternoon sun warm on their faces, neither of them quite ready to say goodbye. Finally, Selena reached out and squeezed his hand once.
I'll see you soon, she said. You better.
She climbed into her car, and Grayson watched her drive away. Mia appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his.
You like her, Mia said.
Not a question, a statement. Grayson looked down at his daughter.
Yeah, I do. Good, Mia said. Because she likes you too. How do you know? Because she looks at you the way you look at her. Grayson didn't have a response to that. 2 weeks later, Selena called him in the middle of the night.
Grayson fumbled for his phone, heart racing. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Selena said quickly. I'm sorry. I know it's late. It's 2 a.m. I know I couldn't sleep. Grayson sat up, rubbing his eyes. What's going on? I've been thinking, Selena said, about everything. About Adrian and the company and what happens next.
Okay. And I realized something.
What?
I don't want to do this alone anymore. Grayson's heart started beating faster.
Selena, I'm not talking about the company, she interrupted. I'm talking about life, about having someone who cares about me for reasons that have nothing to do with money or power or what I can do for them. And I know that's you. I know it's been you since the night we met.
Grayson didn't know what to say.
I'm terrified, Selena continued, her voice shaking slightly. I'm terrified of screwing this up or hurting you or dragging you and Mia into more danger. But I'm more terrified of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what could have happened if I'd just been brave enough to try.
Selena, Grayson said quietly.
Are you asking me out?
There was a long pause.
Yes,
she said finally. I think I am.
Grayson smiled in the darkness of his bedroom. Then the answer is yes.
Really? Really? He could hear the relief in her voice. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to date someone or be in a relationship or neither do I, Grayson said.
We'll figure it out together. Okay. Okay. They talked for another hour about nothing and everything, about fears and hopes and the terrifying uncertainty of trying something new. When they finally hung up, Grayson lay awake staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He thought about the night at the bus stop, about handing a stranger his last $16, about every decision he'd made since then that had led him to this moment. And he thought about Mia's drawing, the three of them holding hands. Maybe it wasn't such an impossible picture after all. The next evening, Selena came to dinner again. This time, Grayson actually cooked. One-handed spaghetti wasn't his best work, but Mia and Selena both ate it without complaint. After dinner, while Mia was brushing her teeth, Selena and Grayson stood in the kitchen together. I meant what I said last night, Selena said quietly. I know. I want this, whatever this is.
So do I.
Selena stepped closer, close enough that Grayson could see the flecks of gold in her eyes. I'm going to mess this up, she warned. Probably multiple times.
So am I, Grayson said. I work too much. I'm broke and unemployed.
I don't know how to be around kids. Mia loves you already.
I'm scared, Selena admitted. Me too. She reached up and touched his face gently. But you're still here.
Yes,
Grayson said. I am. Selena kissed him.
It was soft and tentative and tasted like hope. When they pulled apart, Selena was smiling. Really smiling. Not the polished CEO smile she wore in boardrooms, but something real and unguarded. I should go, she whispered. You could stay.
Grayson.
Not like that, he said quickly. I just meant you could stay for a movie. Mia would love it, and so would I. Selena looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay,
They watched a Disney movie on the couch, Mia wedged between them with her stuffed rabbit. Halfway through, Mia fell asleep with her head on Selena's shoulder. Selena looked down at her, then at Grayson. "This is nice," she said softly. "Yeah," Grayson agreed. "It is."
And for the first time in longer than he could remember, everything felt exactly right. 2 years changed everything. Not overnight, not in some dramatic transformation where broken pieces suddenly fit together. Real change never worked that way. It happened slowly, in the spaces between the big moments. In the morning coffees and the failed dinner recipes and the arguments about work-life balance that neither of them really knew how to navigate. Grayson found work again eventually, not in construction. That bridge had burned too thoroughly, and honestly, he didn't want to go back. Instead, Selena offered him something different. Not a job handed out of pity, but a real position that actually made sense. She was building something new at Apex Dynamics. A foundation. Not the corporate charity kind that rich people used for tax breaks, but something genuine. A program designed to help unemployed parents get back on their feet. Job training, emergency housing assistance, childcare support, all the things Grayson had desperately needed that night at the bus stop when he had $16 and no idea how he'd survive the week. Selena wanted him to help run it.
"You know what it's like," she'd said, sitting across from him at his kitchen table 6 months after Adrian's arrest. "You know what people actually need versus what we think they need."
I can throw money at problems all day long, but you can make sure it goes to the right places. Grayson had stared at her. "I don't have any experience running a foundation." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." And they did. It was messy. There were budget meetings where Grayson felt completely out of his depth, surrounded by people with business degrees and corporate experience. There were days when he wanted to quit because he felt like a fraud. But Selena was there, reminding him that the people they were helping didn't need someone with an MBA. They needed someone who understood what it felt like to be desperate. The foundation launched 8 months after Adrian went to prison. They called it Second Chances, which Mia said was kind of boring but also nice. They started small, helping 50 families in the Seattle area, then 100, then more. Grayson met people who reminded him of himself. Single parents working 2 jobs and still falling behind. People who'd been fired unfairly and couldn't find work because their reputations had been destroyed. People who just needed someone to believe in them for 5 minutes so they could believe in themselves again. He helped a woman named Rita who'd been homeless for 6 months get an apartment and a job as a receptionist. He helped a man named Kevin who'd been blacklisted from his industry find retraining in a completely different field. He helped dozens of families who thought they'd lost everything discover that maybe, just maybe, there was still a way forward. And every time someone thanked him, every time he saw hope return to someone's eyes, he thought about that rainy night and the terrified woman who'd stumbled into his life. Selena poured herself into the foundation with the same intensity she'd once reserved for Apex Dynamics. She still ran the company, but she'd learned to delegate. Learned that she didn't have to control everything personally. Learned that trust didn't always lead to betrayal. The trial had been brutal. Adrian fought every charge, hired the best lawyers money could buy, and dragged the whole mess through the courts for over a year. But in the end, the evidence was overwhelming. The financial fraud, the attempted murder, the conspiracy. All of it laid out in excruciating detail. He was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Vanessa Park got 12 years. Daniel Reeves got 15. Several other executives took plea deals and testified against Adrian in exchange for lighter sentences. The media had a field day with all of it. The billionaire CEO who'd nearly been murdered by her ex-fiancé. The construction worker who'd saved her life. It was the kind of story that made headlines for months. Selena hated every second of it. She'd never wanted to be famous for surviving a conspiracy. She'd wanted to be known for building something that mattered. But the media didn't care about nuance. They wanted drama and romance and a neat narrative that fit in a 3-minute news segment. Eventually, the attention faded. Other scandals took over. Other stories became more interesting. And life settled into something that almost felt normal. Grayson and Selena didn't rush things. They dated like actual adults, which meant figuring out schedules and navigating the complicated logistics of a relationship when one person was a billionaire CEO and the other was a single dad. Selena came to Mia's soccer games. Grayson went to Apex board meetings when Selena needed moral support. They had dinner together 3 or 4 times a week. They argued about stupid things like who left dishes in the sink and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. It was imperfect and awkward and sometimes frustrating. It was also the best thing that had happened to either of them in years. Mia adapted to having Selena around with the kind of easy acceptance that only kids seem capable of. She didn't ask complicated questions about what Selena was to them. She just accepted that Selena was part of their lives now and treated her accordingly, which meant Selena got dragged to school events and art projects and long conversations about why horses were better than unicorns. Selena, who'd spent her entire adult life in boardrooms and conferences, learned how to braid hair and help with math homework, and sit through school plays that were objectively terrible, but also kind of wonderful. She wasn't perfect at it. She missed things sometimes because work demanded her attention. She didn't always know the right thing to say when Mia was upset. She still occasionally treated parenting like a problem that could be solved with logic and strategy. But she tried. And Mia loved her for it. One evening, about 18 months after everything had fallen apart and started coming back together, Grayson found Selena sitting on the couch looking at something on her phone. Her expression was complicated. Not sad exactly, but thoughtful in a way that made him nervous. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting beside her. She turned the phone toward him. It was a news article about Adrian, an interview he'd given from prison, claiming he'd been set up, that Selena had fabricated evidence, that he was the real victim. Grayson felt anger spike through him. "He's lying." "I know," Selena said quietly, "but people will believe him anyway. Some people already do." "Does it matter?" "I don't know." She set the phone down. Part of me wants to fight back, to issue a statement or sue him or do something. But another part of me just wants to let it go. He's in prison. He lost. What does it matter what he says now? Grayson took her hand. "What do you want to do?" Selena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I want to focus on the people we're helping. I want to build something good enough that Adrian's lies don't matter anymore. I want to prove that I'm more than just the woman who survived his conspiracy." "You already are." She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "How do you always know what to say?" "I don't," Grayson admitted. "Half the time I'm making it up as I go." Selena laughed and leaned against him. "We're a mess, aren't we?" "Yeah," Grayson said, "but we're a mess together." They sat like that for a while, just existing in the quiet comfort of each other's presence. Mia was in her room doing homework. The apartment was warm. Outside, Seattle was doing its usual thing of being gray and rainy and somehow still beautiful, and Grayson realized something. He was happy. Not in the explosive, overwhelming way that people talked about in movies, but in the quiet, steady way that came from knowing you were exactly where you were supposed to be. The 2-year anniversary of the night at the bus stop came on a cold December evening. Grayson hadn't planned anything, hadn't even thought about it until he woke up that morning and realized what day it was. 2 years since he'd been sitting at that bus stop with $16 and no hope. 2 years since a terrified woman had stumbled into his life and changed everything. He texted Selena, "Remember what today is?" Her response came a few minutes later. "How could I forget? Así." They made plans to meet that evening after Mia went to bed. Selena said she wanted to show him something. When Marcus picked him up at 9, Grayson had no idea where they were going. They drove through downtown Seattle, past Apex headquarters, past the neighborhoods Grayson had walked through looking for work 2 years ago. And then they turned onto Pike Street. Grayson's heart started beating faster. Marcus pulled up to the bus stop. The same one. The shelter still had graffiti on it. The bench still looked uncomfortable. But standing beside it, wearing a long coat and a nervous expression, was Selena. Grayson got out of the car. "Hi," Selena said. "Hi," Grayson replied. "What are we doing here?" "I wanted to come back," Selena said simply, "to where it started." They stood there in the cold December air, looking at the bench where Grayson had sat 2 years ago, broke and desperate and alone. "I think about that night a lot," Selena said quietly. "About how close I came to dying. About how you saved me even though you had every reason not to." "I didn't save you," Grayson said. "I just gave you $16 and pointed you in the right direction." "You did more than that." Selena turned to face him. "You reminded me that not everyone in the world was out to get something from me. That kindness still existed. That maybe I didn't have to fight everything alone. Selena,
Let me finish, she said, her voice shaking slightly. These past 2 years have been the hardest and the best of my life. Adrian's trial, rebuilding the company, starting the foundation, learning how to be with you and Mia. It's been terrifying and messy and nothing like I imagined my life would be. Is that a bad thing? No, Selena said. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small, a worn $20 bill. Grayson stared at it. What is that? $16 plus interest, Selena said with a small smile. I know I already paid you back. I know this is symbolic and probably silly, but I wanted to give you something to mark this anniversary. Grayson took the $20 bill, his throat tight. You didn't have to do this. I know, but I wanted to. She stepped closer. Everything I have now, the foundation, the second chance with Apex, you and Mia, it all started because a broke single dad gave a stranger his last $16 when he had every reason to keep it for himself. I'd do it again, Grayson said, in a heartbeat. I know you would. That's who you are. Selena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. And I love you for it. The words hung in the cold air between them. It was the first time either of them had said it out loud. Grayson's heart hammered in his chest. Selena, you don't have to say it back, she said quickly. I just needed you to know. I love you. I love Mia. I love the life we're building together, even when it's hard and confusing and nothing like what I planned. Grayson stepped forward and kissed her. It was different from their first kiss. Less tentative, more certain. Like something that had been building for 2 years and was finally being released. When they pulled apart, Grayson rested his forehead against hers. I love you too, he said. I have for a while now. I was just scared to say it. Why? Because the last time I loved someone, I lost her, and I was terrified that if I said it out loud, something would happen to you too. Selena cupped his face in her hands. I'm not going anywhere. You promise? I promise. They stood there at the bus stop, holding each other in the cold December night while the city moved around them. Cars passed, people walked by. Life continued like it always did. But for Grayson and Selena, time seemed to stand still. Eventually they got back in the car and Marcus drove them to Selena's house. Not the fortress in the woods where they'd hidden from Adrian, but a new place. Smaller. Warmer, the kind of house where people actually lived instead of just survived. They sat on the couch with mugs of tea, wrapped in blankets, talking about everything and nothing. Mia asked me something yesterday, Selena said eventually. What? She asked if I was going to marry you. Grayson nearly choked on his tea. What did you say? I said I didn't know, that it was complicated. Selena looked at him. But the truth is I want to, not right now, not tomorrow, but someday, if you'll have me. Grayson set his mug down carefully. Are you proposing? No, Selena said quickly. Maybe. I don't know. I'm terrible at this. Grayson laughed. You really are. So is that a yes or… Yes, Grayson interrupted. Someday, when we're ready. Yes. Selena smiled. It was the kind of smile that made her whole face light up, the kind that reminded Grayson why he'd fallen in love with her in the first place. They kissed again, slower this time, and Grayson thought about how far they'd both come. From a rainy bus stop to a warm house, from desperation to hope, from strangers to something more. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been smooth, but it had been worth it. 6 months later, the foundation opened its second location in Portland, then a third in Tacoma. Word spread. Other cities reached out, asking for guidance on starting similar programs. Selena hired more staff. Grayson found himself traveling more, giving talks at conferences, sharing his story with people who needed to hear that it was possible to rebuild after everything fell apart. He was good at it, better than he'd expected. People responded to his honesty, to the fact that he didn't try to make his story sound perfect or inspirational. He just told the truth about the fear and the desperation and the moments when he genuinely believed he wouldn't make it. And then he told them about the woman who'd changed everything, about taking a chance on kindness,
about how the worst night of his life had somehow led to the best years. Mia turned 10. She was taller now, still loud and opinionated and completely fearless. She'd stopped asking when Selena was going to officially move in and just started assuming she already had. Half of Selena's clothes were in Grayson's closet. Her toothbrush lived in the bathroom. She had her own key. It happened so gradually that none of them noticed until it was already done. One evening, after a particularly long day at the foundation, Grayson came home to find Selena and Mia in the kitchen attempting to bake cookies. The kitchen was a disaster. Flour covered every surface. Something was burning in the oven. Mia was laughing hysterically while Selena tried to salvage the situation with the kind of intense focus she usually reserved for board meetings. "How bad is it?" Grayson asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Catastrophic," Selena said without looking up. "I don't understand. I followed the recipe exactly." "You use salt instead of sugar," Mia pointed out, still giggling. Selena looked at the container in her hand, then at Mia. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's funny!" Grayson started laughing too. He couldn't help it. The whole scene was so absurd and domestic and perfect in its imperfection. Selena looked at him, exasperated. "Are you going to help or just stand there laughing?" "I'm considering my options." She threw a dish towel at him. They ordered pizza instead, ate it on the couch while watching some movie Mia had picked out. Selena fell asleep halfway through with her head on Grayson's shoulder. Mia fell asleep on the other side, curled up under a blanket. And Grayson sat there between them, watching the movie he wasn't really paying attention to, and thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. 2 years ago, he'd been alone and broken and terrified. Now he was here, with two people he loved more than anything, building something that mattered, creating a life that felt real and messy and good. It wasn't the life he'd imagined when he was younger. It wasn't the fairy tale version where everything worked out perfectly and nobody struggled, but it was his, and that was enough. The proposal happened on a random Tuesday. They were at the foundation office, going over budgets and arguing about whether they could afford to expand into 2 more cities that year. Selena said yes. Grayson said they should wait. It was the kind of mundane disagreement they had all the time. And then, in the middle of debating staffing costs, Selena just stopped talking. She looked at Grayson across the desk, her expression suddenly serious. "Marry me," she said. Grayson blinked. "What?" "Marry me," Selena repeated. "I know we said someday, I know we said we'd wait, but I don't want to wait anymore. I want to marry you. I want to officially be part of your and Mia's family. I want to stop pretending we're not already building a life together." "Selena, I don't have a ring," she continued, talking faster now. "I didn't plan this. I was going to do something romantic and thoughtful, but then we were sitting here arguing about budgets, and I just realized I didn't want to wait another day to ask you." Grayson stood up and walked around the desk. He pulled her to her feet and kissed her. "Yes," he said when they broke apart. "Yes? Yes, I'll marry you." Selena's face broke into the biggest smile he'd ever seen. "Really? Really?" She threw her arms around him, and Grayson held her tight, feeling her heart racing against his chest. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." They told Mia that evening. Her reaction was to scream, "Finally!" and launch into an immediate discussion about whether she could be the flower girl or if that was too babyish, and maybe she should be the best man instead. "Best person," Selena corrected with a smile. "And yes, if you want." Mia hugged them both so hard Grayson's ribs hurt. The wedding was small, just close friends and family. They held it at the house, in the backyard, on a sunny afternoon that felt like a gift after Seattle's typical gloom. Mia walked Selena down the aisle, looking impossibly grown up in her dress. Marcus stood as Grayson's best man, his usual stoic expression cracking into something that might have been a smile. They wrote their own vows. Selena's were eloquent and beautiful, and made half the guests cry. Grayson's were simpler. He talked about a rainy night and $16 and a woman who'd taught him that sometimes the best things in life came from the moments when you stopped protecting yourself and just helped someone else. "You saved my life," Grayson said, holding Selena's hands. "But more than that, you reminded me how to live it, and I promised to spend the rest of mine showing you that the chance you took on me was worth it." When they kissed, Mia cheered louder than anyone else. At the reception, Grayson danced with Selena under string lights while their friends and family celebrated around them. "How did we get here, Sosin?" Selena asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "Poorly thought out decisions and good luck," Grayson said. She laughed. "Is that really what you think?" "No," Grayson admitted. "I think we got here because we both took chances. You took a chance asking a stranger for help. I took a chance giving you my last $16. And then we kept taking chances on each other even when it was scary. I'm glad we did." "Me too." And they swayed together in the fading light, and Grayson thought about everything that had led to this moment. The pain and the fear and the countless times when giving up would have been easier than pushing forward. But they hadn't given up. They'd fought and struggled and made mistakes and kept trying anyway. And somehow, impossibly, they'd ended up here. Later that evening, after the guests had left and Mia had finally gone to bed, Grayson and Selena sat on their front porch steps, exhausted and happy. "Thank you," Selena said quietly. "For what?" "For not walking away that night. For giving me a chance when you had no reason to. For building this life with me even when I had no idea what I was doing." "You did the same for me," Grayson said. "I was broke and unemployed and completely lost. You gave me a purpose again. You gave me hope." "Yes. We gave each other hope," Selena corrected. "Yeah," Grayson agreed. "We did." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the neighborhood settle into night. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd never met?" Selena asked. Grayson considered the question. "Sometimes I think you would have survived somehow, found another way out. You're too stubborn to let Adrian win. And you?" "I don't know," Grayson admitted. "Maybe I would have figured things out eventually, or maybe I would have kept spiraling. It's hard to say. I'm glad we didn't have to find out." "Me too." Selena leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Grayson Cole." "I love you too, Selena Cole." She smiled at the name. They decided she'd keep Vaughn professionally, but take Cole personally. Another compromise in a relationship built on them. Inside the house, their house, Mia was asleep in her room. The foundation they'd built together would help hundreds more families tomorrow. And the two of them would wake up and keep doing the work, keep taking chances, keep building something good out of the wreckage they'd both started with. It wasn't a perfect story. There were still hard days, still arguments and setbacks and moments when the weight of everything felt overwhelming. But it was their story, and it had started with $16 and a choice to help someone who needed it. Looking back now, Grayson understood something he hadn't that night at the bus stop. Sometimes the worst moments in your life aren't endings. Sometimes they're beginnings. Sometimes they're the universe pushing you towards something you never knew you needed. Sometimes $16 and a stranger in the rain can lead to everything. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to take the chance, broken people can help each other become whole again. Not because either of them was perfect, but because they were willing to try.